My intern stole my idea, and I let him. He took my entire strategy and claimed it as his own, right in front of the team. Everyone believed him, even my boss. But I didn't say a word, because I knew something he didn't. That plan wasn't just an idea. It was a trap. And the moment he walked into that meeting to present it, I knew exactly how it was going to end. I'm Alex Carter, 34. Not the kind of person people notice when they walk into a room. I'm not loud, not charismatic, not the guy who dominates meetings. Lean build, always a bit tired looking, shirts that blend into the background. Most people would walk past me without a second glance. And honestly, I've learned to be okay with that, because I've seen what happens when you stand out too early. A few years ago, I presented an idea that saved a failing project. It took weeks of analysis, sleepless nights, and careful execution. When the results came in, my manager stood in front of the board and took full credit. I remember sitting there, watching him explain my strategy like it was his own. That was the day I stopped caring about recognition. Since then, I focused on one thing: results. And that's exactly what I was doing now. The strategy on my screen wasn't just another report. It was designed to win one of the biggest deals the company had seen this year. Every variable calculated, every risk mapped out, every step connected. On the surface, it looked clean and simple. But underneath, it was a system only I fully understood. Make sure it's ready by tomorrow. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Daniel Hayes, my manager. Early 40s, tall, sharp suit, always perfectly put together. The kind of guy who looked like he belonged in charge. He spoke with confidence, moved like he owned every room he entered. People respected him. Or at least, they thought they did. Almost done, I replied. He didn't ask for details. He never did. As long as the work was delivered, that was enough for him. How it got done and who actually did it was never the priority. That was the system here. Work flowed down. Credit flowed up. Big presentation coming, Daniel added casually. We need something impressive. I gave a small nod. You'll have it. He walked away before I could say anything else. Not that I planned to. Here we go again, a voice said softly beside me. I turned slightly. Mia Collins, 30, shoulder-length brown hair, always neatly kept. She had this calm presence, but her eyes, sharp, observant, missed nothing. Unlike most people here, Mia didn't just see results. She saw patterns. You're doing all the work, she said, lowering her voice. And he's going to take the credit. I shrugged lightly. That's how it works. Mia frowned. Only if you let it. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked back at the screen. The final section of the strategy was still open, the most critical part. The part that connected everything together. The part that, if misunderstood, would break the entire plan. It doesn't matter, I said finally. Mia studied me for a moment longer. You always say that. She wasn't wrong, but this time, it wasn't entirely true. Because this plan? This one was different. I leaned back slightly, my eyes still on the screen, reviewing every detail one last time. Every number, every assumption, every hidden dependency. Perfect. Let's just say, I said quietly, whoever presents this, I paused for a second, better actually understand it. Mia narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? I didn't explain. I just saved the file. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just finishing a strategy. I was setting something up.
The next morning, I noticed him before anyone introduced him. Not because he stood out, but because he was watching. Ryan Blake. That was his name, though I didn't know it yet. Early 20s, maybe 23. Tall, lean, with the kind of clean, polished look that made people trust him instantly. His hair was styled perfectly, his shirt crisp, his posture confident but not arrogant, at least not on the surface. But his eyes gave him away. They didn't wander like a typical intern trying to absorb everything at once. They focused, specifically on me. I kept working, pretending not to notice. A few minutes later, Daniel's voice cut across the room. "All right, everyone, quick introduction. This is Ryan Blake, our new intern. Top of his class, strong recommendations, high potential." Ryan smiled just enough to seem humble. "I'm really excited to learn from everyone here." Everyone. But when he said it, he glanced in my direction. Subtle. Deliberate. Daniel gave him a quick overview of the team, but I wasn't paying attention to the words. I was watching the pattern. Ryan nodded at the right moments, asked just enough questions to sound engaged, but never too many. He knew how to perform curiosity without looking inexperienced. That alone told me something. He wasn't here just to learn. He was here to move fast. Later that afternoon, I felt a presence near my desk. "Hey, Alex, right?" I looked up. Up close, Ryan looked even more composed. His handshake was firm, practiced, not awkward like most interns. His smile was friendly, but measured. "I've heard a lot about your work," he said. I didn't react. "Have you?" "Yeah," he continued smoothly. "Daniel mentioned you handle a lot of the complex strategy stuff. I was hoping I could learn from you." There it was. Direct, but respectful. Most people would have taken that as a compliment. I took it as interest. "Depends on what you want to learn," I replied. Ryan leaned slightly against the edge of my desk, casual but controlled. "How you think," he said. "How you build something that actually works." That answer was better than I expected. Too good. Across the room, I caught Mia watching us. Her expression was neutral, but I could tell she was paying attention. Mia didn't trust easily, and she definitely didn't trust quickly. "I can show you some things," I said. Ryan's smile widened just a fraction. "I'd really appreciate that." Over the next few hours, he stayed close. Not in an obvious way. He didn't hover or interrupt, but he positioned himself where he could observe. He watched how I structured data, how I approached problems, how I moved between details. He wasn't asking random questions. He was mapping my process. "You break things down differently," he said at one point, genuinely curious, or at least convincing enough. "It's just pattern recognition," I replied. Ryan nodded slowly, like he was storing that away. That's when I knew. He wasn't just learning. He was studying. By the end of the day, Mia walked over, arms crossed lightly. She waited until Ryan stepped away before speaking. "I don't like him," she said quietly. I glanced at her. "You don't like anyone new." "This is different," she replied. "He's too polished." I didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. But I wasn't concerned. Not yet. Because people like Ryan always followed the same path. They moved fast. They reached early. And eventually, they overstepped. I looked back at my screen, the strategy still open, still incomplete in ways only I understood. If he was watching me, then sooner or later, he'd try something. And when he did,
I'd be ready.
By the third day, Ryan had already learned how to ask the right questions. Not too obvious, not too simple. Just enough to make it seem like he was progressing faster than expected. "Can I see how you structure a full strategy?" he asked that morning, standing beside my desk with that same controlled confidence. "Not just parts of it, the whole picture." I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I leaned back slightly, studying him for a moment. Up close, it was easier to see the details most people missed. His posture was relaxed, but calculated. His tone respectful, but intentional. Even the way he held eye contact, steady but not challenging, was practiced. He wasn't guessing anymore. He knew exactly what he was asking for. "You think you're ready for that?" I said. Ryan smiled faintly. "I learn fast." I nodded once. "I know." That was the moment Mia noticed. She walked over slowly, pretending to check something on the desk, but her attention was clearly on us. "What's going on?" she asked casually. "Ryan wants to see the full strategy," I said. Mia's expression shifted almost instantly. Not dramatic, but sharp enough that I caught it. "That's a lot," she said carefully. "Maybe he should start with smaller pieces." Ryan didn't react, but I could feel the tension in the air. He stayed quiet, letting me decide. "Smart move." "I'll handle it," I replied calmly. Mia looked at me for a second longer than usual. There was a question in her eyes. Why? But she didn't say it out loud. Not yet. I turned my screen slightly so Ryan could see. "This is the current project," I said. "High-value client, complex structure. Everything connects." Ryan leaned in slightly, his focus immediate and intense. His eyes moved quickly across the screen, not randomly, but systematically, like he was breaking it down layer by layer. Good. That meant he was paying attention. I walked him through the structure, the logic, the flow of decisions. I explained enough for it to make sense, but not everything. Because the real foundation? I kept that to myself. There were sections I moved past a little too quickly. Assumptions I didn't fully explain. Dependencies I mentioned but didn't define. Small gaps. Invisible to anyone who didn't already understand the system. Ryan didn't question it. He nodded along, absorbing everything, occasionally asking follow-up questions, but never challenging the parts I left unclear. That told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't here to understand. He was here to collect. By the end of the session, he straightened up, exhaling lightly. "This is impressive," he said. "I didn't realize how detailed it was." I gave a small shrug. "Details matter." He smiled. "Yeah, they do." But something in his tone had changed. Less curiosity, more certainty. Later that evening, Mia walked over the moment Ryan left the office. "You gave him too much," she said quietly. I didn't look up from my screen. "Did I?" "Yes," she insisted. "Alex, I've seen this before. People like him, they don't just learn. They take." I paused for a second, then continued typing. "It's fine," I said. Mia frowned. "No, it's not. If he uses your work, he will," I said calmly. That stopped her. Completely. She stared at me, trying to understand if I was serious. "You know that? And you're just letting it happen?" she asked. I finally looked up. For the first time, there was something different in my expression. Not frustration. Not concern. Control. "I didn't say I was letting it happen," I replied quietly.
Mia's eyes narrowed slightly. Then what are you doing? I closed the file slowly, the screen going dark. Waiting. Because if Ryan was going to take the plan, then he was going to take all of it, including the parts he didn't understand.
I knew it was going to happen, just not this fast. The meeting invite came early that morning. Strategy presentation, high priority. My name wasn't on it. That alone told me everything. I didn't react, I didn't ask. I simply kept working as if nothing had changed. But across the room, Mia had already noticed. They didn't invite you? She asked, her voice low but sharp. I shook my head once. Her expression tightened. That's not right. It's your project. I didn't respond, because at this point, it wasn't about right or wrong. It was about timing. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them gathering. Daniel stood at the front, confident as always, adjusting his jacket, preparing to lead. Beside him, Ryan. He looked different today, more polished, more certain. His posture straighter, his movements more deliberate. The slight hesitation he had when he first arrived? Gone. Replaced by something else. Ownership. He's presenting, Mia whispered, disbelief in her voice. I followed her gaze. Ryan was holding a printed version of the strategy. My strategy. Neatly formatted. Clean. Professional. And completely his. At least, that's how he intended to present it. Inside the room, Daniel began speaking. Even through the glass, I could recognize his rhythm. Confident introduction, framing the importance of the project, setting expectations. Then he turned slightly and gestured toward Ryan. That was the moment. Ryan stepped forward, calm and composed. No hesitation, no doubt. He began. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what he was saying. I knew the structure, the flow, the logic. Because I built it. Every slide, every argument, every conclusion. Outside the room, a few colleagues had started to notice. Wait, isn't that Alex's project? One of them muttered quietly. Another shrugged. Maybe he passed it over. Mia didn't say anything, but I could feel her frustration. Inside, Ryan continued smoothly, moving through the presentation with practiced confidence. He didn't stumble. He didn't hesitate. On the surface, it was flawless, because he had memorized it, not understood it. That difference wasn't visible yet, but it would be. Daniel watched from the side, nodding occasionally, clearly satisfied. To him, this was working. The presentation was strong, the delivery confident, the outcome promising. Exactly what he wanted. Credit without effort. At one point, Daniel even stepped in briefly, adding a comment, reframing part of the strategy as if he had shaped it himself. Same pattern, different day. Except this time, I wasn't being ignored. I was being removed. After about 20 minutes, the meeting continued deeper into discussion. Questions, clarifications, details. That's when things would start to matter. But for now, Ryan was still in control. The door opened briefly as someone stepped out, and for a second, the voices inside became audible. Strong approach, someone said. Very impressive for an intern, another added. I saw Ryan smile. Just slightly. That small, satisfied expression of someone who believed they had already won. Mia turned to me, her voice barely controlled. Say something, she urged. You can still walk in there and stop this. I looked at the room. At Ryan. At the plan unfolding exactly as expected. Then I shook my head. Not yet, I said. Mia stared at me, stunned,
Alex. He thinks this is his moment, I continued calmly. I leaned back slightly, eyes still on the glass wall. Let him have it. Because the higher he stood right now, the harder it would be when everything fell apart.
By the end of the day, the story had already spread. Not officially, not in emails or meetings, but in whispers. Ryan's presentation had been a success. At least, that's how people described it. I could hear it in the way they talked near the coffee machine, in the quick glances they threw toward me, in the subtle shift of tone when my name came up. Did you see that intern? He nailed it. Honestly, Alex should have spoken up if it was his. Maybe it wasn't. That last one lingered. Maybe it wasn't. I kept working. Same desk, same screen, same quiet rhythm. But everything around me had changed. Mia didn't sit down right away that morning. She stood beside my desk, arms crossed, her expression tighter than I'd ever seen it. "You're really not going to say anything?" she asked. I didn't look up. "About what?" She let out a short breath. "Don't do that, Alex. You know exactly what I mean." I paused, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. "I'm waiting," I said. Mia shook her head, frustrated. "Waiting for what? For him to take everything? For them to forget you even exist?" I turned slightly toward her. "They already did," I said calmly. That stopped her. Not because she didn't believe me, because she did. Across the office, Ryan was no longer just an intern. He had become something else, a rising name. People greeted him differently now. Conversations paused when he spoke. Even Daniel stayed closer to him, guiding him through discussions, positioning him as someone worth watching. Ryan adapted quickly. His confidence grew, not dramatically, but steadily. The kind of confidence that builds when no one challenges you. He spoke more in meetings, offered suggestions, even corrected small details in conversations. And no one questioned it. Because as far as they knew, he had earned it. Later that afternoon, I noticed something new. An unfamiliar presence near Daniel's office. A woman in her early 50s, standing with a straight posture that didn't need to demand attention. It commanded it naturally. Her short, silver-streaked hair was neatly styled, her expression composed but sharp. She wore a dark tailored suit, simple but precise. Evelyn Grant, CEO. You didn't need an introduction to know that. I had only seen her a few times before, and each time, the entire floor shifted when she arrived. Conversations became quieter, movements more careful. Because Evelyn didn't tolerate inefficiency, and she definitely didn't tolerate mistakes. Ryan noticed her too. I saw it in the way his posture changed slightly. Straighter, more alert. His eyes followed her as she spoke briefly with Daniel, her expression unreadable. Opportunity. That's what he saw. Minutes later, Daniel walked back out, his energy noticeably higher. "Big update," he announced. "Evelyn wants a full presentation on the strategy. Directly." A ripple moved through the office. This wasn't a normal meeting. This was exposure. The kind that could change careers overnight. Ryan stepped forward almost immediately. Not aggressively, but confidently enough that no one else moved first. "I can handle it," he said. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Good. You will." I watched the exchange without reacting. Of course, it was happening exactly as expected. Ryan turned slightly, his gaze passing over me for just a second. There was something new in it. Not curiosity, not respect. Certainty. He believed this was his moment. And maybe, in a way, it was. Mia leaned closer to me again, her voice lower this time.
This is getting out of control. I didn't respond, because from where I was sitting, everything was still perfectly in place. The silence, the confidence, the stage being set. Ryan thought he was preparing for the biggest opportunity of his life, but he didn't realize he was walking into the most important test, and he wasn't ready for it.
The office felt different the morning of the presentation. Quieter. Not calm, focused. Ryan arrived earlier than usual. I noticed him the moment I walked in. He was already at his desk, reviewing printed slides, marking small notes along the margins. His usual confidence was still there, but now it was sharper, more concentrated, like someone stepping onto a bigger stage than before. He didn't look nervous. That was the problem, because if he truly understood what he was about to present, he would be. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop as if it were just another normal day. Same routine, same silence. Across the room, Mia was already watching him. "You see that?" she whispered as I passed by her desk. I followed her gaze. Ryan was rehearsing quietly, lips moving slightly as he repeated key points. His posture was straight, controlled. He paused occasionally, not to think, but to recall. To remember the sequence. Not the logic, the sequence. "He's memorizing it," Mia said. I nodded once. Yes. She turned to me, her expression more serious now. "Alex, this isn't just another meeting. This is the CEO. I know. And you're still not going to stop this?" I didn't answer, because at this point, there was nothing to stop, only something to watch. A few minutes later, Ryan stood up and walked toward Daniel's office. I could see them through the glass. Daniel was speaking, giving final instructions, his gestures confident, reassuring. The kind of manager who believed presentation mattered more than substance. Ryan listened carefully, nodding at the right moments. But then something happened. Daniel asked a question. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the pause. Just a second. Ryan's expression didn't collapse. He recovered quickly, gave an answer, kept his composure. But I saw it. That hesitation. Small, almost invisible, but real. Mia saw it too. Her eyes shifted toward me slowly. "He doesn't fully get it, does he?" I leaned back slightly, watching through the glass. "No," I said quietly. Back at his desk, Ryan flipped through his notes again, this time faster. His movements were still controlled, but there was a subtle urgency now. He stopped at one section, frowned slightly, then moved on without resolving it. That section. I recognized it immediately. One of the gaps, one of the parts I had intentionally left incomplete. Not wrong, just unfinished. The kind of detail that wouldn't break during a presentation, but would collapse under pressure. Mia walked over again, lowering her voice. "You did this," she said. It wasn't a question. I didn't deny it. "You knew he would take it," she continued. "So you built it like this on purpose." I closed my laptop slowly. "I built it correctly," I said. Mia frowned. "Then what's the problem?" I stood up, glancing once more toward Ryan. "The problem," I replied calmly, "is that he doesn't know which parts actually matter." Mia went silent, because now she understood. This wasn't about catching him stealing. It was about exposing what he didn't understand. Across the room, Ryan picked up his folder, taking a slow breath before heading toward the conference room. This was it. His biggest moment. His opportunity to prove himself.
his chance to be seen. He walked past me. For a brief second, our eyes met. There was confidence in his, certainty. In mine, nothing changed, because I already knew what was coming next. And for the first time, the plan was no longer in his hands. It was in the questions he wouldn't be able to answer.
The room was already sealed when the presentation began. Glass walls, polished table, every seat filled with people who mattered. And at the center of it all, Evelyn Grant. Up close, she was even more imposing than from a distance. Mid-50s, composed, with a presence that didn't demand silence, it created it. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, and when she spoke, people listened not out of respect, but necessity. Ryan stood at the front, confident, controlled, ready. "I'll walk you through the proposed strategy," he began, his voice steady, almost flawless. From outside the room, I watched. Every word, every movement, every step of the plan unfolding exactly the way I designed it. Ryan moved through the opening smoothly. Strong framing, clear structure. Even the transitions were clean. If someone didn't know better, they would think he built it himself. And for a moment, it worked. Evelyn listened without interrupting, her fingers lightly resting on the table, her expression unreadable. Daniel sat beside her, nodding occasionally, clearly satisfied. Ryan reached the core section, the part that mattered. He slowed down slightly, not enough for most people to notice, but enough for me. "This section outlines the scalability model," Ryan continued, flipping to the next slide. Evelyn raised her hand. He stopped immediately. "Explain that assumption," she said calmly. No emotion, no pressure in her tone, but the room tightened instantly. Ryan nodded. "Of course." He started explaining. At first, it sounded fine. The structure was there. The words were correct. But then, Evelyn asked again, "On what data is that based?" A pause. Small, almost invisible. Ryan recovered quickly. "It's based on projected market behavior." "Projected how?" Evelyn cut in. Now the silence was heavier. Ryan blinked once. His posture didn't collapse, but something shifted. His rhythm broke. The confidence was still there, but it had to work harder now. "I analyzed similar patterns." "Which patterns?" Evelyn asked. No aggression, just precision. Ryan hesitated again, longer this time. Across the table, I could see it happening. The gap. The exact point where memorization ended and understanding was required. And he didn't have it. Daniel leaned slightly forward, trying to intervene. "What Ryan means is..." Evelyn didn't even look at him. "I asked him." Silence. Ryan swallowed, flipping through his notes. Subtle, but visible now. His eyes moved faster, searching for something that wasn't there. Because I never gave it to him. Outside the room, Mia stood beside me, her arms slowly lowering. "Oh my God," she whispered. Inside, Evelyn leaned back slightly, studying Ryan. "Continue," she said. Ryan tried. He moved forward in the slides, skipping over the section, pushing into the next part. But it didn't matter anymore. The structure was broken. The flow was gone. Every word now felt weaker, uncertain. And Evelyn saw all of it. That's when I moved. I opened the door and stepped inside. No rush, no hesitation. Every eye turned. Ryan froze for just a second. Daniel's expression changed immediately.
Alex, this meeting is— I know, I said calmly. Then I looked at Evelyn. With your permission. She studied me for a brief moment, then gave a small nod. That was enough. I stepped forward, stopping beside Ryan. Up close, I could see it clearly now. The confidence was gone, replaced by something else. Panic. I turned slightly toward the screen. That assumption, I said, my voice steady, is based on a conditional variable he skipped. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. I continued. The model only works if the dependency chain holds, and it doesn't unless you adjust the secondary input. Ryan said nothing, because he couldn't. I explained the structure, the logic, the missing links. Not fast, not dramatic, just clear, precise, complete. By the time I finished, the room was silent again. But this time, it was different. Evelyn looked at Ryan, then back at me, understanding, full and immediate. Ryan's shoulders dropped slightly. That was it. I looked at him for a second, then said quietly, "You didn't steal my idea." A pause. You stole something you never understood.
No one spoke for a few seconds after I finished. Not Ryan, not Daniel, not even the executives around the table. Because the truth didn't need repeating. It was already clear. Evelyn Grant leaned back slightly in her chair, her fingers tapping once against the table, measured, controlled. Her eyes moved from me to Ryan, then briefly to Daniel. She had seen enough. Who built this strategy? She asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. The weight behind it pressed into the room instantly. Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Daniel shifted in his seat, his usual composure cracking just slightly. Evelyn, I can explain. I didn't ask you, she said, cutting him off without even looking at him. Her gaze remained on Ryan. This time, there was no escape. Ryan swallowed, his posture no longer confident, no longer controlled. The polished image he had built over the past days collapsed quietly in front of everyone. I worked on it, he said, his voice weaker now. With guidance from him? Evelyn asked, nodding toward me. Ryan hesitated. That was his answer. Evelyn didn't press further. She didn't need to. She turned to me. You built it. Not a question, a conclusion. Yes, I replied simply. Another silence, but this time, it was different. Not tense, resolved. Evelyn nodded once, then closed the folder in front of her. Thank you, Alex. That was it. No praise, no exaggeration, just recognition. And somehow, that meant more than anything else. She stood up. Ryan, she said, her tone calm but final. You'll meet with HR after this. Ryan didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just nodded slowly, his eyes lowered, because there was nothing left to protect. Then Evelyn looked at Daniel. For the first time, there was a slight shift in her expression. Not anger, not disappointment. Something colder. Leadership is not about standing next to results, she said. It's about knowing where they come from. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. The message had already landed. Hard. The meeting ended shortly after. People filed out quietly, avoiding eye contact, processing what they had just witnessed. Ryan left first. Alone. No confidence left.
No image to maintain. Just silence. Daniel lingered a moment longer, then approached me. Up close, he looked different, less composed, less certain. I didn't realize, he started. I didn't let him finish. It's fine, I said, because it was. Not because I accepted it, but because I no longer needed anything from him. He nodded slowly, then walked away. And just like that, the dynamic was gone. Outside the room, Mia was waiting. The moment she saw me, she smiled. Not surprised, not shocked. Just satisfied. I knew it, she said. I shook my head slightly. You hoped it. Same thing, she replied. We walked back toward our desks, the office atmosphere completely changed. Conversations were quieter, but different now. Not whispers. Awareness. Later that day, I received a message. A new assignment, direct from Evelyn. Higher stakes, bigger scope, full ownership. No middle layer, no interference. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the screen for a moment, then closed it. Because for the first time in a long time, the work and the recognition finally aligned. So, what would you have done? If someone stole your idea, would you speak up immediately? Or stay silent and wait for the perfect moment? Would you fight for credit right away, or let them fall into their own mistake? And when the truth comes out, do you believe justice always wins? Or only if you're smart enough to control the game? Tell me in the comments. I want to know where you stand. And if you enjoy stories like this, full of twists, mind games, and satisfying endings, don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful office dramas.